He never meant to become a villain in a little girl story. That love was a way of twisting good intentions into something unrecognizable. Something that leaves scars on everyone it touches. If you've ever loved someone so completely that you lost sight of where devotion ended and absorption began, hit the like button because this story is going to take you somewhere dark and real. Somewhere most people are too afraid to admit exists. I met Sarah when autumn was bleeding into winter, when everything was dying and pretending it was beautiful. She was a single mother. Exhausted in that bonded way that comes from carrying the weight up to lips and shoulders built for one. Her daughter Emma was 4 years old with eyes that had already seen too much. Disappointment, the kind of no in sadness that doesn't belong on a child's face. He should have walked away. He should have seen the warning signs written in Sarah's desperate gratitude when he showed the slightest interest in her complicated life. But he didn't walk away. He never do. He had this fatal flaw. This need to be needed that makes me throw myself into broken situations thinking it can be the glue that holds everything together. So instead, it became a fixture in their lives so gradually that none of us noticed when visits tending to sleepovers tending to make keeping a toothbrush in Sarah's bedroom and have my clothes in her closet. Emma started calling me by my first name at first, then just a catch-all nickname, and then one day she looked up at me with those huge grey eyes and asked if she could call me Daddy. Sarah froze when she had it, her coffee cup suspended halfway to her lips, and he could see the question forming in her expression. The silent asking now whether this was okay. Whether I was ready for that kind of claim on my identity. I said yes. That helped me. I said yes without thinking about what it meant, what he was promising, what kind of responsibility he was taking on. I just knew that hearing that word from Emma's mouth made something in my chest crack open. Some locked door I'd been guarding my whole life, suddenly swinging wide to let in all this light and warmth and belonging. It became that. I read bedtime stories and tied shoelaces and wiped away. And celebrated every small victory like it was a miracle. I taught Emma to ride a bike, holding the seat as she pedaled shakily down the sidewalk. My heart in my throat beat the terror joy of watching her find her balance. I made pancakes shaped like enamels and set the mornings while Sarah slept in. Grateful for the rest. I attended preschool performances where Emma was a flower in the garden, standing perfectly still while other kids fidgeted. And I clapped louder than any other parent there. I was building something. I was creating this family from spare parts and sheer force of will. And it felt real. It felt like everything I'd been missing my entire life had finally fallen into place. Sarah would watch me with Emma sometimes. This expression on her face that I couldn't quite read, something between gratitude and guilt, and something else, something darker that I chose to ignore. We'd lie in bed at night after Emma was asleep and Sarah would trace patterns on my chest with her fingertips and tell me how lucky she was. How she never expected to find someone who would love her daughter like his own. The way she said it always felt like a test was passing and failing simultaneously. But the cracks started showing. On month 6, Sarah became distant, pulling away in small increments that I tried to ignore. She'd flinch when it touched her unexpectedly. She'd make excuses to avoid intimacy, claiming exhaustion or stress or a headache. She started working late more often, leaving me alone with Emma 4 hours at a time, and I told myself it was fine. That she was just trying to provide for her family. That this was what commitment looked like. Emma and I grew closer as Sarah drifted further away. The little girl would climb into my lap for stories, her small body fitting perfectly against mine. Her hair smelling like strawberry shampoo and innocence. She'd tell me secrets she wouldn't tell her mother. Little kid weighs about months under the bed and whether her and father would ever come back and if he would live like everyone else always left. I promised her he wouldn't. I swore on everything he had that he was different, that he was staying, that she could count on me forever. The promises tasted like ash, even as he spoke them because some part of me already knew he was lying. Some part of me understood that he wasn't making these promises for Emma's benefit but for my own. Because he needed to believe he was the kind of man who kept his word, WHO didn't abandon the people who depended on him. I want to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me because I know some of you are carrying this weight alone. Have you ever built your entire identity around being what someone else needed, only to realize you'd erased yourself completely in the process? Have you ever loved a child who wasn't yours and felt the terrible beauty of that bond, knowing it could be severed at any moment by forces beyond your control? Drop a comment right now. You can just type I understand, or I've been there, or even just a heart emoji if words feel too heavy. Your comment, no matter how small. Tell someone else cruising through that they're not alone in this, that their complicated feelings about attachment and family aren't shameful or wrong. Sometimes just seeing that to another person. understands that when a peasant has walked through the same fire, that's what makes the difference between feigning silence and finding the case to face the truth. So go ahead. Leave your comment. Let's build something real here, a space where the messy painful truth about love isn't something we hide but something we share, because you deserve to be heard. And your story matters. So night everything started like any other. Sarah came home late from work, her makeup smudged, her blouse button drawn. And Inu in that instant recognition why that bypasses logic and goes straight to gut instinct. Inu she'd been with someone else. That our relationship had become a convenient fiction she maintained for Emma's sake and nothing more. She didn't even try to lie when he confronted her. She just looked at me with this exhausted honesty and said she couldn't do this anymore, couldn't pretend we were something we weren't. She told me she'd been seeing her ex, Emma's biological father. That he'd come back into their lives and wanted to try again. She said it like it was inevitable, like I'd always been a placeholder for that ill thing. He asked her about Emma. Asked what happened to all those promises about stability and family and giving her daughter a real father figure. Sarah's face went hard down, harder than I'd ever seen it, and she told me Emma wasn't my daughter. That I'd had no right to get so attached. That I'd crossed boundaries she'd never explicitly said but had apparently expected me to intuit. She made me sound predatory, like my love for this child had been inappropriate, somehow twisted. So worst part was he could see her logic. He could understand how from the outside it looked wrong. This man, who wasn't related by blood, playing dead, forming this intense bond with a little girl who wasn't his. I'd let myself believe it was beautiful and pure and right. But Sarah was reframing the entire narrative, making me the villain in a story he thought he was helping write. She told me to leave. She told me to pack my things and go and never contact them again. She said it was for the best that Emma would forget me eventually. The kids were resilient and she'd move on. I stood there in the living room with the cat together, surrounded by evidence of the life I thought I'd built, and felt reality dissolving around me like smoke. I'm not proud of it, but Yvette had to let me say goodbye to Emma at least, to explain that he wasn't abandoning her. That circumstances were just complicated. Sarah refused. She said a clean break would be easier, that dragging it out would only hurt Emma more. She actually used those words. Like she cared about minimizing Emma's pain, like she hadn't just decided to rip away the only stable father figure that child had ever known. If this story speaks to something in you, if you've lived through the kind of love that breaks you and remakes you, this channel is your space. Subscribe and become part of a community that understands that love isn't always light, that sometimes the most powerful connections are the ones that scare us. Here, we explore the psychology of toxic love, the beauty in darkness, and the strength it takes to survive when loving someone becomes the most dangerous thing you've ever done. No judgment, no simple answers. Just honest stories about the complicated, messy reality of human connection. Hit that subscribe button if you're ready to dive deeper into this dark romantic journeys. This is a place where your complicated feelings about love are not only valid but understood. I left that night because what else could I do? I walked out of that house with my bags and my broken heart and my shattered sense of self. And I didn't look back because looking back would have destroyed me. But I couldn't stop thinking about Emma. I couldn't stop wondering if she'd wake up the next morning and look for me. If she'd ask where I went, if Sarah would tell her I'd chosen to leave, or if she'd craft some story that made me the bad guy. I imagined Emma's confusion and head and the slow-dawning realization that another peasant she trusted had disappeared from her life. It ate me like acid. The obsession started small. I'd drive by their house sometimes, not stopping, just checking to see if the lights were on, if Emma's bike was in the yard, if everything looked normal. I told myself I was just making sure they were okay. That I still cared about their well-being, even if I couldn't be part of their lives anymore. But it escalated. I started timing my drives to coincide with when Sarah would be taking Emma to preschool. I'd park down the street and watch them walk to the car, Emma small hand in her mother, that pink backpack bouncing against her shoulders. I'd watch and my chest would ache with this terrible longing, this sense of double wrongness, that I wasn't there to buckle her seatbelt and kiss her forehead and tell her to have a good day. I created fake social media accounts to follow Sarah's profiles, scrolling through pictures of Emma's life continuing without me. Birthday parties I wasn't invited to. Halloween costumes I didn't help choose. Christmas morning with presents I didn't wrap. Sarah's ex appeared in more and more photos, his arm on Sarah's shoulders, Emma sitting on his lap, this new family unit forming in the space he used to occupy. The darkness came slowly, so gradually I didn't recognize it until I was drowning. I started fantasizing about taking Emma. Not kidnapping, not anything violent, just taking her somewhere Sarah couldn't find us, Somewhere we could be fade and dote, without interference. I'd plan it obsessively in my head, mapping out logistics. Imagining conversations where I'd explain to Emma that I'd had to rescue her from a maid who didn't understand the weapon. The fantasies grew more elaborate and more disturbing. I saw myself as a hero in this story. So when WHO truly loved Emma, WHO understood what she needed. I convinced myself Sarah was a villain. That she'd manipulated me and used me and discarded me when someone more convenient came along. I rewrote our entire relationship in my mind until I believed my own delusions. I never acted on the fantasies. That's important. I never actually tried to take Emma or hurt anyone or do any of the terrible things my broken mind can do. But I wanted to. God, I wanted to so badly, it became physical pain. This constant taking my chest like something vital had been carved out and nothing would ever fill the void. I started therapy after I nearly got tested for loitering near Emma's preschool. A teacher recognized me from when I used to pick Emma up, noticed me sitting in my car watching the playground, and called the police. The officer who questioned me was kind but firm. I explained that I had no legal rights to this child, that my behavior constituted stock, that if I didn't stop I'd face serious consequences. I also suggested, not unkindly, that I might need professional help. The therapist helped me understand what had happened, how I transferred all my unresolved need for family and belonging onto Sarah and Emma. How it created an identity around being that because I'd never figured out who I was without someone to save. She explained trauma bonding and codependency and the difference between love and need. She made me see that what I'd felt for Emma, while genuine in its way, had been about me more than her. I needed to be needed. I needed to prove I could be the father I'd never had. I needed Emma to validate my worth as a human being. The realization was devastating. It meant everything I thought was pure and selfless had actually been selfish, a way of using a child to fill my own emptiness. It meant Sarah had been right to push me away, right to protect her daughter from my intensity, right to see something unhealthy in how attached I'd become. The healing process was brutal. It meant accepting that Emma would forget me, that I'd become a vague memory of a man who'd been out for a while when she was little. Nothing more. It meant letting go of the identity I'd built as her father and figuring out who I was without the troll. It meant eating with the shame of my obsession and the horror of how close I'd come to acting on my darkest impulses. I still think about Emma sometimes. She'd be in first grade now, learning to read, losing her baby teeth, becoming her own peasant. I wonder if she's happy with her mother and her biological father. I hope she is. I hope she's loved and safe and never thinks about the man who played dead for 6 months and then vanished. I hope Sarah was right that kids are resilient, that the trauma I heard I'd cause was minimal, that Emma moved on easily. But I also know with the terrible clarity that comes from therapy and time and honest self-reflection that it damaged something in that child, even if she doesn't remember me consciously. I left a mark. I was another peasant. WHO came into her life, made promises, formed a bond, and then disappeared. It reinforced the pattern her absent father had established that men live. That attachment is dangerous, that love is temporary. That knowledge haunts me more than anything else. Not the loss of Sarah or the destruction of the relationship I thought I had, but the understanding that, in trying to save Emma from abandonment, I'd become just another peasant. WHO abandoned her. The thing about Dark Love, about obsession masquerading as devotion, is that it feels righteous in the moment. It feels like you're the only one who truly understands, the only one who cares enough, the only one willing to fight for what matters. It's only later, when you're sitting in a therapy sofa confronting the ugliness of your own need, that you realize love isn't supposed to consume you like that. Real love, healthy love, leaves room for the other peasant to exist independently. It doesn't demand to be the center of someone's universe. It doesn't turn a child into a symbol of your own redemption. I learned that I can't love anyone properly until I learn to exist without needing them to complete me. I learned that playing savior is just another form of control. I learned that the hardest thing in the world is accepting that some doors close permanently, some relationships end without resolution. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away and stay away. So this is my confession, my warning, my plea for anyone who sees themselves in this story. If you're building your entire identity on being what someone else needs, stop. If you're getting involved with someone because they're broken and you think you can fix them, stop. If you're forming intense attachments to fill your own emptiness, stop, because that path leads nowhere good. It leads to obsession and stalking and sitting in therapy trying to understand how you became the villain in a story you thought you were helping write. I'm not looking for forgiveness or sympathy. I'm just telling you what it looks like from the decide when the obsession breaks and you're left with the wreckage of who you thought you were. I played father to a child who wasn't mean, and I lost myself completely in the role. The darkness that followed nearly destroyed me. And I have to live every day with the knowledge that I might have damaged an innocent child in my desperate need to meet to someone. That's the real cast up taxi club, not the pain you feel, but the pain you cause. Not the emptiness you're trying to feel, but the holes you live in other people. Not the story you tell yourself about devotion and sacrifice, but the truth that surfaces when you finally have the cake to stop lying. Emma, wherever you are. I hope you're okay. I hope your real father is better than he could have been. I hope your mother gave you the stability you couldn't. And I hope someday, when you're old enough to understand, someone explains to you that the man who called himself that for those 6 months loved you as much as his broken heart knew how to love. And that his living had nothing to do with you and everything to do with him. If you've made it this far, if this story resonated with the dark places you don't like to examine too closely, turn on the notification bell so you never miss these journeys into the complicated reality of human connection. Because we keep telling these stories not to glorify the darkness but to shine light on it. To show that, even in our worst moments, even when we become the villains in our own narratives, there's a path back to something resembling wholeness. It's just a much harder path than we ever imagined it would be.